By tradition, Italy opens the World Cup cycling season with Milan-San Remo. By tradition, it also closes with the Tour of Lombardy. Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Liggett, along with Paul Sherwin, and this, the 91st running of this great race. They call it the Falling Leaves of Autumn, although it's now mid-October, and it is a beautiful autumn day. 250 kilometres taking the race from Varese via Bergamo and back again to the finish there. This is a cracker today because so many riders are still on the line who can win the World Cup, the most exciting finish to the competition in its near 10 years of being. The high point of the day, the Colle Valpiana, coming at 989 metres, and at the top there we should see at least some selection as the riders make their way down towards the finish in Bergamo. And not surprisingly, Paul, all of the big stars are here.
Certainly, and that's the trophy they'll all be looking to take home at the end of the day, Phil. But the Italians very happy, I should think, to see this man, the newly crowned world champion, Laurent Brochard, on Italian roads. And I'm sure he'll do that rainbow jersey very proud this afternoon.
Well, he's promised, Paul, he will get into the attacks today. There's the world number one for the past 2 years, Laurent Jalabert. And he is having a tremendous season. So too Andrea Taffi, a winner of a World Cup race this year. And he also had such bad luck in the World Championships in Spain just a few weeks ago.
Last year's winner of Tour of Lombardy as well, and a win today could give him the World Cup Championships. So a lot on the line for these riders as they go down and prepare themselves over the final few minutes for the start of the Tour of Lombardy.
Coming along the carpet here, Francis Tézier. And there's all the smiles of Laurent Brochard. He must feel a very proud man. He didn't start the world title as a favourite to win it, but he certainly rode like a world champion on that day in San Sebastian. Congratulations all round, 173 riders on the start line, and this, the World Cup, the final counting event, and it really is winner takes all today, I think, because it is so finely poised at the top. Let's have a look at the points table in the World Cup. And there it is, Rolf Sørensen, the leader, and he's being chased all of the way by other riders who could displace him at the top today. Bartoli is second, Rebellin is third, Taffi is fourth, André Schmil is fifth. All of these riders have won a World Cup competition this year, and Max Chiandri of Great Britain down there in sixth place. In theory, the top 5 riders could turn this race right around today. Sørensen, a spectator, I'm afraid. He's only here in the hope by the end of the day he will still be the leader of the World Cup and will be taking the award home with him. Renk was leading this race by a maximum break of 1 minute and 20 seconds. He was only away for 20 kilometres. We are now looking here at Belli on the right of our picture and Oscar Pelliccioli as we're now on the climb of the Colle Valpiana, taking them up to 989 metres. And this, the first decisive move of the race so far. This is the final World Cup event of a very interesting competition this year. In theory, any one of these 6 names could take out the championship. Sørensen, a bystander, and hopes he still leads this trophy by the end of the day. Max Chiandri in 6th place of Great Britain. The top 5 riders, by the way, in the competition have all won a World Cup race this year. If they could repeat that today, then they would certainly take home the championship. Well, this is the leading group now as they climb the small little hill, the Colle dei Pasta, and I must say that's a very fitting name for a race in Italy, Paul. Here's the leaders.
It certainly is a very saucy little climb as well, but these riders got away over the long climb to the top of the Roncola, and it looks now as if they've built up a very consistent lead, but the chase is on behind.
Man leading the chase there, Oscar Pelliccioli, former rider who's ridden with distinction in the Tour du Pont, and the champion of Italy is Gianni Farasin in that group as well. Now let's pull back and just see from the helicopter how far down the group is. And it is quite a little distance at the moment. There it is, still pretty compact, as they still have a few ripples to come before they get down to the finish. Luco Shinto started the season with a win in Malaysia in the Tour of Langkawi and has been looking for a follow-up ever since, I think, this year. He's leading the chase and Laurent Roux is on his right. A little Frenchman on the TVM squad.
Well, the 7 leaders filled quite a strange situation because at one time they were down to just 20 seconds advantage and now they've stretched it up round about a minute mark. So they really have put in a very good performance at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see just which teams are chasing behind.
Well, chasing is the word, Paul, because this race, like so many of the big races this year, is set to set a record today. The racing at the fastest average ever seen in the Tour of Lombardy. And certainly the man driving the pace now, and we haven't seen too much of him in action at the front this year, except when he won the national championship, and that is Gianni Farazin. He's climbing very, very well here. These are one of those nasty little climbs in Italy. Good roads, but they twist and they turn, and they stay at quite a steep and acute angle too.
They certainly do, and the crowds turned out on this marvellous day in the autumn of the season for Italy, because it really is a race that brings out the crowds. They really love the Tour of Lombardy, and I think over the last 3 years the change to the finish in Bergamo has made it a much easier race for the Italians to come out and watch. And here we're actually on the side of the Col de Pasta, where it's just quite an amazing little climb, around about 50 kilometres left to go, and once they get over the top, Phil, we'll get a chance just to see exactly who the strong men are. But there's a very good col just before the finish, just 30 kilometres before the end. That's the Col de Gallo, and that's, I think, where the big guns will come out.
The only man who's ever won this race, the champion of Italy, Farazin, third in line at the moment. He won it a couple of years ago. Back to the chase group on the climb here, and it's good to see the TVM rider, Laurent Roux, riding extremely well, winner of the Tour de l'Avenir.
And I'm sure he'll get a lot of confidence from that performance. He rode a very good Tour de France as well, and I'm sure this is a man we'll see an awful lot of in the future. Riding very close to the front on the right-hand side in the white jersey is Max Chiandri. He's looking to try and win the World Cup event this year, because if he can finish first over the line in Bergamo, he could take the overall lead in the World Cup, and that would be a great performance by him, because he hasn't had a brilliant season. He's always threatened to show a little bit of brilliance, but never really come up with the goods.
Here's the world champion, Laurent Brochard. Well, he promised us he would get in a move today and not disgrace his new rainbow jersey, and that's exactly what he's done. Moved up to the front, around about the Col Valpiana, and he's been in the thick of the action ever since. These 7 riders still trying to hold off a chase group of some 20-odd riders here. But look at the determination now of Laurent Roux. He's the lone soldier for TVM. It's a team which had a very good season, and he's doing an awful lot of work here, perhaps a little bit too much, because he's got some big names sitting behind him there.
It certainly has. They must be closing down there, because in fact you can see the team car stopped on the left-hand side there. That means that the gap has come down to well within the 1 minute, so they're eating into that advantage that those 7 riders at the front had. There's Francesco Crasagrande there in the Saiko jersey, just on the wheel of Max Chiandri in the white, and Cedric Vasseur, the GAN rider, in the middle, a man who certainly has been one of the revelations of this season. But riding close to the front in the yellow as well there is Alex Zuller. Zuller and Jalabert rode a brilliant performance last week, Phil, first and second in Milan-Torino, and I think they're certainly going to be the men to watch on the finish. There's confirmation of that time gap now coming down to just 50 seconds.
And there's the face of the Italian champion, Farazin, looking for some help from the rest of the group here. Vladimir Belli comes through very quickly indeed. And other riders in this breakaway, Marco Celestino, he was the under-23 European champion a couple of years ago, and Gilberto Simeoni in this breakaway as well, along with the world champion. Now, Max Chiandri is deciding it's time to liven this up and try and close down this 50-second gap to nullify it. He knows these roads very well indeed. Yes, he does hold a British racing licence, but he's very much an Italian, Max.
But they're not going to let him go. Coming up there was the Mapei train there. That was Taffy being brought across there by Franco Ballerini, and now Taffy there deciding that he's going to go over the top. He too is a man in with a chance of taking the overall win in the World Cup this year, if he can take out the Tour of Lombardy just as he did last year.
Let's just take a close look at the face here of Taffy. It's a very customary tactic by his to go when the race gets in the closing stages and just see who are strong enough to go with him. He's such an aggressive rider. Started out his career, at least as far as I was concerned, Paul, when he picked up a couple of stages in the old Tour of Americas down in Florida. And we thought then he was just a domestique. Well, how life has changed over this last 2 seasons.
But he's certainly had some very good teachers, because over the last couple of years on the Mapei squad, he's ridden alongside a man like Johan Museo, who certainly taught him how to race. But at the front, the 7 leaders still working very well indeed, Phil. And again, a little bit of picture breakup. That's because of the microwave link-up from the motorbike there. But you can see these riders picking excellent lines around these corners and still managing to hold off that chase from behind.
And they're the sort of roads where they might well hold it off, because they're narrow and they're not allowing a great deal of opportunity for the attacks to get themselves settled in here. There's the chase group. It's still a respectively quite a big bunch actually as they start the descent here. And this is Taffy sticking his right knee out there, now his left knee to keep his bike upright. He's actually coming very close to the motorcycle cameraman here, who's now decided to get out of the way because they are descending very quickly, and that gap certainly is coming down.
It certainly is. You can see, in fact, how Taffy was using the motorbike to get himself around the corners. A lot of riders do this. Sean Yates once explained to me that one of the most important things for him when he used to descend, because he was a madman when it came to the descents, was to look at the brake lights of the motorbike in front, because that could help him judge just how severe the corner was. But now taking over here is Michele Bartoli, so another man looking for a win in the World Cup today.
You know, I think he'd prefer the World Cup trophy to the Tour of Lombardy. That sounds a strange thing to say when he's Italian, but he really wants that trophy. He's the one man that Rolf Sorensen fears most, because Sorensen can only watch this race. He was up on the Madonna del Gazala, where Richard Virenque went over the top first there. That was midway through the race. And that, by the way, is where they have a beautiful bronze of the great Fausto Coppi, if ever you get time to pop in and have a look. And he can only watch Rolf Sorensen because his wrist, or his hand rather, still broken, badly so, after that crash in the Tour of Holland. And he can't defend his lead. He can only hope for the right result today.
Well, he's obviously going to sweat it out on the finish line, probably watching in a little cafe somewhere not too far from here, just checking on who's in the breakaway, trying to work out the points and see, because he's not been able to defend his title over the last two events. Well, this is where we are just right now, Phil. 47 kilometres to go, and very shortly these riders will be coming up to the final obstacle of the race, the Col de Gallo.
Well, there's still plenty of fight in them, and Belly wants more help from the rest in the breakaway here. I think he was looking there at Farazin in particular, but Christian Hen of the Telecom team also not doing too much in this breakaway, and the gap continues to come down. In fairness, though, for Hen, he was the man that spearheaded this breakaway on the climb of the Col Valpiana, along with Marco Seppellini, a former junior world champion. They were the two that started the move, and since then Seppellini has dropped away from the action. And it looks to me, Paul, as though very shortly there'll be an awful lot more in the action.
It certainly will. I think a lot of riders now waiting for that final climb of the Col de Gallo. That's where the big guns are really going to try and split it. They did try to split it on the last climb there, the Col de Pas there. It didn't do very much damage at all, but you could see the gaps starting to appear in the main field. But the disadvantage for the leading group now, Phil, is through these little tiny streets here. They can't get themselves organised, and in fact I think rather than having a fluid operation, they started to lose a little bit of time on the chasers.
It looks like just these three riders at the front doing most of the work now. Pelliccioli is the rider on the front. He gives way now to Farazin, then comes Christian Hen, so he must have heard my words now because he's working quite hard in this breakaway. And this Celestino, Mirko Celestino, is the other rider coming through. And then the world champion, Laurent Brochard. It's true what they say, you know, as they say often with the Tour de France, pull on the maillot jaune and you ride like two men. It looks as though it's happening today with the world champion, Laurent Brochard. First big race in that jersey as the new world champion. Here comes Taffy, though, and that gap is not very significant at all now. We've gone back into the town, and still Taffy is bringing up the rest.
This man certainly knows how to race. He was formidable last year at the end of the season when he took out this event. Not getting any help from the Festina rider moving up into second position there, because they're trying to block the race just a little bit for Laurent Brochard in the front, and Chiandri in the white there moving up, trying to cover all the moves that he feels are going to come quite soon.
Well, Alessandro Baronti, he's third in line as we look down here from the Asics team. He was the rider who replaced Claudio Chiappucci at the 11th hour in the Tour of Italy this year when Chiappucci failed a blood test and joined the Tour of Romandy, in fact, and then he went on to win a stage, so that was the highlight of his career so far.
In fact, Chiappucci still hasn't got his licence back, having had it withdrawn by the Italian Federation just days before the World Championships as well. So Claudio Chiappucci having all kinds of difficulty this year with the new blood testing that's been put into place by the UCI. But Phil, in the main field here, there's no organisation. Nobody really wants to take over the lead. But if one or two of these riders feel that they can win the World Cup in the overall rankings, they must organise themselves and come to the front. This looks to me very much like the shape of David Rebellin, another one of those 5 riders who have a chance of taking the overall World Cup if they could just get the win today.
2 World Cup victories for him in midsummer, the Grand Prix Suisse and the San Sebastian Classic, and that really catapulted him right up the overall classification, so a real chance there. He knows a good result today and he will run out as winner of the World Cup, although I have to say that it doesn't look too likely. This looks like Barragon of the Once team, and I must say, Paul, first time I've ever seen him, he must be a new pro.
Certainly is. I think at the end of the season a lot of these riders come up for the first time. They get a chance to ride as stagiaires or apprentices on the big professional teams, and if they're good enough then they can turn professional just before the end of the year. But a man we have seen an awful lot of is Alberto Leonas Barrutia. the real workhorse of the Oncé squad. So they've obviously decided now that this is the day for Laurent Jalabert. Last week he had a very difficult time in the World Championships, obviously marked out a little bit, I think, by the Italians and Michele Bartoli, but today he feels that he's got a chance of getting himself a World Cup victory. But the man who took the World Championships last week at the front and riding a very good race indeed, considering he's hardly trained at all this week. In fact, he's only been on his bike for about 4 hours since winning that world title just 7 days ago.
Well, this is Simeone of the ASICS team in the breakaway. Christian Hen now. The gap has come down to 31 seconds. The Oncé boys have now clearly decided. Here are the two workhorses, Lenis Berrutia and Barragon. Barragon getting his first taste of good action at the front here. Willing to work because, after all, he works for a man who is the world #1 now, Laurent Jalabert. And Jalabert this year has already won 18 races. And the season isn't over yet.
It certainly is not over for Laurent Jalabert. He's had a great season. Not a good Tour de France that he would have expected to have, but I think he can't make his mind up exactly how he should aim at the Tour de France. I think really he should just forget about the overall standings and go for the green jersey, as Sean Kelly used to do, and then that, I think, would give him a much more successful Tour. But when it comes down to one-day racing, you can't say anything about his performances there.
I quite agree, Paul. He's coming to the end of a second long season as the world #1. And you can't be much better than that. So Sean Kelly reigned for a long time till they had to change the ranking system to get him out of the #1 spot, something he was always conscious of because he was so consistent in the big-time one-day cycle races. There's the face of the ageing Alberto Lenis Berrutia, another good workhorse. Oncé losing this year, of course, Neil Stevens, who's been pulled into service in the Festina squad and ridden extremely well on that side of the fence too. Back with the breakaway, still the champion of Italy, Farizin, a former winner of the Tour of Lombardy, trying to keep this breakaway clear of the field. It developed over the top of the Col Valpiana, and there are all their names, and Brochard, the world champion, is in it, tacked onto the back at the moment.
It certainly is. You can get a chance just from the helicopter shot here to see what the gap is from that leading group of 7 riders back to the main field, and in it, Andrea Tafi looking very comfortable indeed. He gets the honour here to wear #1. Sitting on his wheel there is Bruno Thibaut, one of the French riders from the World Championship last week, I should say. And then at the end of this group of 3 Oncé riders is Cédric Vasseur, the man who had the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. But Oncé have decided to pull it all back together, I think, Phil, before that final little climb of the Col de Gallo, because that, I think, is certainly where they expect the big attack to come. And it's a good situation, just 30 k's from the finish.
Well, certainly these riders deciding it's time to close down, and Taffy almost a smile on his face there, I think, Paul, because he's rather pleased now to see that the Oncé boys have come back into the action here. There's Bogart, the champion of Holland, and he's just coming far enough, but not too far. He's not doing any work at all, but this breakaway, or the chase group rather, has thinned down considerably under the pressure of Oncé.
It certainly has, but you can see the speed of this group now. They're certainly eating rapidly into the lead that those riders had. Over 1 minute it was at one time, but now I feel certainly is going to come down very quickly. But you just see the tape there on the ear of Laurent Jalabert. He really has become a master of the radio communications with his team manager. Oncé took up the role put down by the Motorola cycling team, one of the first teams to instigate this two-way communication with the riders, and Manolo Sainz really looks for all the opportunities to help his riders when it comes to tactical decisions out on the road.
And back with the breakaway, 1, 2, 3, it's Oscar Pelliccioli. He's been a real bonus to this breakaway, always willing to work as hard as possible. Vladimir Belli, he's the rider in blue, slipping away down the back from the Brasiliat team.
Certainly, I think these riders hoping that the climb is going to come very quickly, because that will be to their advantage. Several of these riders, very good climbers indeed, and they may well be able to open up their advantage just a little bit over that chasing group once they get to the climb. But the important thing first is to get there.
Well, they seem to be working well together here, but I can't see them surviving. Just under 5 hours they've been racing now on what is a glorious autumn day in northern Italy. Here comes Pelliccioli. And I'm wondering just what Brochard is thinking like now. Every time he looks down his sleeves, he sees the rainbow stripes. It must be a great feeling, and it's certainly inspired into a performance today, because as Paul Sherwin has said, he's come here with very little training after the celebrations of winning his world title. Here's the Oncé boys, and they've got 3 riders trying to bring back the breakaway.
Doing a great job, one of the best drill teams in the whole of international cycling there. And I think just tacked on the back there, another man in yellow moving up there into that line, and I'm sure I saw the silhouette of Alex Zuller, there's a chance to see. In fact, Phil, that's down to less, I would say, than 20 seconds.
Yeah, it is. And there's more riders in that group than I actually thought were there too. From the helicopter you can see it's quite a big bunch. A lot of yellow jerseys have got themselves into a position now because they know the kill is almost on, and once it comes I would expect an immediate counter-attack. I think that's why Jalabert has moved up near the front, just to be ready for it.
That's Jalabert in 5th position there. Just in front of him is his teammate Alex Zuller. A great performance by those two guys just a few days ago in Milan-Torino, where they absolutely walked all over the field. And around about 6th place there, riding alongside Jalabert, is Andrea Taffi. And you can see just behind him Franco Ballerini, the other big strong man from Italy. So a lot of nerves, a lot of twitching going on at the moment. Everybody's waiting now for the climb because they know, I feel, Phil, that Jalabert is going to do something on this next climb, and he really would like a bit of revenge because he's got excellent form. World time trial champion. He was expecting to win the road title last week. He didn't do that, so a win today I think would round his season off perfectly.
And our cameraman here, who's Italian, getting right in there. Some beautiful shots coming our way of the faces of the men he clearly thinks are about to figure in the closing stages of the Tour of Lombardy. He must obviously not just photograph cycling, he must be something of an enthusiast, I think, because he knew the faces he wanted to see there, and I think, you know, they won't be far away from the finishing line either in first place.
They certainly won't, but look at that. That's a great ideal of how a team should operate. You've got all of your men at the front there working in a very long line, and when you've got a man like Leonard Barrutia, you can count on him to work like 2 or 3 men from one team. But Once decided now that this is what they have to do. They want to pull back this leading group of 7. They've tried to stay clear, but it seems to me that the impetus came out of the group once they came over the last climb, the Col de Pasta, and on this long valley road they haven't really been forcing as much as they should have done, and now's the time when they start to look over their shoulders just a little bit, and that's the worrying moment when you can expect that the main field is going to come back.
I think it's more or less over because Farazin has lost interest in this breakaway, the former winner, sitting now at the back, and it's not very far at all. Excellent roads, and there it comes, the Once Express, and they've got the quarry just in their sights now. And again, Leonard Barrutia doing everything here to put his team leader in a winning position, and then I'm sure we'll drop away from the action.
Vladimir Obelli just insisting a little bit more, just trying to hope that they can get to the bottom few corners of that climb and try and steal just a little bit more advantage. But looking down the road there, you can see the big mass of the main field starting to come, and Jalabert, I think, now waiting for the moment when it'll be just right for him to pounce, because you can see these riders going all over the road. Looking back for them, I think, Phil, the day's over, but it was definitely a good chance.
Yeah, Pelliccioli took a double take there just to make sure they were coming, and has lost interest as well. Now Farazin gone back to the front here. Good time to try one, because he knows as the leaders come on they might well just ease that little bit, and he's trying to still slip away from the field. But Gianni Farazin, well, he knows all about winning the big races. He doesn't win a lot of races, but he just chooses victories. I have to give him that. Winner the Tour of Lombardy a couple of years ago. And now we've got an attack here as well, and this will be Simeone who's gone clear of the breakaway.
Pelliccioli doesn't want him to get too far, and they're just insisting a little bit. They've just reached the bottom of the climb here, but you can see the big pack there with one of the team cars coming up alongside. I think that's the Française des Jeux team coming up. That'll be Marc Madio driving that car, just explaining to Rebellin and to Max Chianri what the tactics should be from now on, and it's very simple really. Get to the front and try and split this group on the climb.
Madio, having coached the World Cup team winners this season, because even before this event they'd won that competition. They really were very consistent in the one-day races, aided of course by Rebellin's 2 victories and the consistency of Max Chianri.
Simeone's still got a little bit of a lead there, but this is just, I think, prolonging the agony for those 2 riders who are trying to get off the front there, because the main field stretched out in a very long line now. Everybody will be trying to move up, Phil, because this is the time when they realise you have to be in the first 2 or 3 positions when you get onto the foot of this climb, because the attacks are going to come very fast.
Well, it looks as though Belli is trying to keep this breakaway going a little bit. I'm not so sure, in fact, whether the other rider can hang on to him here, Simeone, because he's just caught him, but he doesn't seem to be helping him out too much.
Belli's decided this is the best tactic to adopt here. Very often, just as a group is about to get caught, that's the ideal time to launch a counter-attack, because a little bit of disorganisation comes into the main field as they catch the group that they've been chasing for such a long period of time, and that's when you can just get away and probably steal out another 30 or 40 seconds. But still, the group now, just 5 riders about to get caught by the main field, and that's going to leave those 2 out for a little bit longer. but I feel sure that once we get onto the slopes of that climb, they'll all get pulled back together and we'll see the attacks of the big guns, the men who think they can win the Tour of Lombardy and the World Cup final.
You can see the difference in the speed there of the pelotons. It wipes up these here. There is Pelliccioli. And Laurent Brochard doesn't look quite as relaxed as he did a little bit earlier now. I think he's found the last few kilometres in this breakaway not quite to his liking. He looks rather tired now, and perhaps already at this stage beginning to feel the pressures of being the world champion. You feel almost obliged to be in front of the television cameras. There's the capture. Now what will the Oncé team do? They're just going to go straight by with hardly a glance and continue the chase because there are still 2 riders to pick up.
There certainly are. Now the first 3 men in the Oncé jerseys there, all they will think about now is just keeping the speed high. They know that there are 2 more riders in front because the team manager behind in the car will probably have a television. He'll be watching these pictures live and relaying that information to those riders, telling them that there are 2 riders. They'll know who they are, they'll keep the pressure on. But these riders in fact have made a very good move here, Phil, because they've opened out a little bit of a lead again, which I reckon has gone over the 20 seconds. So 1 minute almost being caught. Now they've actually given themselves another little chance.
Simeone is now pulling his weight in that breakaway. The Asics team could do with a little bit of success. They've had nothing but bad luck with Claudio Chiappucci this year. In fact, all of the problems of Chiappucci, which we told you about earlier, it now means that Chiappucci has decided to race for 1 more season to prove to all of his numerous fans that he's not going to leave the sport in disgrace, as it were.
He still has to find a team though, because he won't be riding for the Asics team next year. They've reinforced their terms just a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see just exactly who does pick up Claudio Chiappucci, because the man, despite those few problems, has been a real fighter over the last few years in the world of professional cycling, and he does claim that the problems he's been having with those blood tests in fact are completely natural, and in fact, and he's going to take the UCI to court to try and challenge the rulings that they've put out against him.
Well, he's absolutely adamant it's not a form of doping with him, and it is just a bad reading as far as he is concerned. And certainly the values do seem to go up and down, Paul, because they say they're tested on a daily basis with their teams, and they never seem to get the same reading twice.
It is a very difficult test, I think, to administer. They do try to get an average reading, but I do know that this year when some of the big races went across the United States, the USCF were a little bit worried about the results that they might have had on their riders who hail from Colorado, because riders from altitude naturally have a very high hemocratic level.
Well, these 2 riders aren't thinking of that right now. They are clear. They're being chased, though, by not just 5 riders they've left, but now by quite a large peloton. And Filippo Simeoni of the Asics team, just in front of Vladimir Belli of the Bachiliat team. And they look as though they're working pretty well together now, but remember, they still have 1 more climb to come of note, and they're going to need at least 1.5 minutes, I think, if they've got any chance at all of surviving. The Oncé feel they've got this race under control, but although they are chasing as a group, it seems to me that Leonis Berrutia is doing the lion's share here.
Certainly is. 1 man disappeared there. There were 5 Oncé riders at the front just before. Now it's down to 4. But in 3rd and 4th position, the 2 men who definitely have got, I think, the best form at the end of this season, Alex Zuller, followed by their Laurent Jalabert, and queuing up on their wheel, all the other hopefuls for victory in this year's Tour of Lombardy, Ballerini, Taffy and Max Chiandri.
Well, it's just about the final race as teammates too for Alex Zuller and Laurent Jalabert, because next year Zuller will leave Oncé in favour of Festina, and then we should see some battles royal in the stage races, because the 2 top boys are going to be rivals, even though they are the best of friends.
Certainly will be interesting to see how Alex Zuller and Richard Virenque form that duo next year when it comes to the races like the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France, because they certainly could, I think, give Jan Ullrich a little bit of a run for his money once the race gets into the mountains. But now we're on the foot of the Col di Gallo, 10 kilometres long at an altitude of 665 metres at the top, so this is certainly where the big guns are going to come out and fire, and I'm sure these 2 riders, having been at the head of affairs for almost 100 kilometres now, are going to start to have very sore legs indeed.
Well, certainly they've got off to the best start, but immediately the pace has shot up here now. The Oncé boys are starting to stretch their legs with the bigger guns, because this is Melchior Mauri, former winner of the Tour of Spain, and I suppose the super domestique of the Oncé team, well capable of winning races for himself, but today I think in the service of Laurent Jalabert. Now he's going to try and pace him onto the climb, and then hope Jalabert can control things from then on.
but still the two leaders, Phil, they're hanging on. They really are hanging on for grim death here as we get a helicopter shot there just to look at the gap, and there's confirmation. Just 18 seconds over the main field, so very shortly I do feel it will be over for them, and it will be pulled back completely by the Once boys taking over at the front. A great performance there by Mauri to set it up, and it looks very much now as if Jalabert and Zuller are taking over the chase themselves.
And it looks like Belli and Simeoni are beginning to struggle here. Belli's had a reasonably good season, in fact, because he got 6th in the Giro d'Italia, the Tour of Italy, and he got 2nd overall, plus his only stage winner of the year in the Tour of Portugal.
Certainly very strange there, Phil. I thought in fact it was Zuller at the front, but Zuller has completely disappeared just as he did in the World Championships last week. He's dropped away from the front of this group, and it's still Melchior Mauri on the front, setting the pace there with Laurent Jalabert sitting very comfortably in 2nd position. And there you can see the main field just behind as we go through a portion of the climb here, which is coming up to around about 10%, so very steep.
Very steep indeed, but look at Belli here, pedalling extremely well. But it's not the time to look over the shoulder, because here they come and they're going to catch them, and there's still a lot of climbing left up this mountain as well. As Belli keeps the pace now, Simeoni does his best to follow. He looks over and around the corners. Now Belli looks over, he will have seen the yellow jerseys of Once. Little acceleration from him, perhaps a little final show of defiance, but it can only delay what must now be inevitable.
Well, a very short distance from the top of this climb to the finish, and this must certainly be the crucial part of the course now. Once they get over the top, there's just 30 kilometres down to the finish in Bergamo. That's around about 18 miles. And I thought I saw just a couple of corners ago a split at the front of that main field, and that's probably why the motorbikers stopped here to wait and see who the next man around is going to be. It's Jalabert, followed by Tafi, Bartoli, and I think Francesco Casagrande.
Well, if Bartoli's in this group, Rolf Sorensen, who is watching this, his heart is going to hit his boots, because a result by Bartoli today and he will win the World Cup, and he's trying to get clear now in this small group.
Well, the man just going off the shot there, Phil, in fact, number 97, that's David Rebellin. He started the day 3rd in the overall standings of the World Cup, and it looks to me as if he's having a little bit of difficulty staying with the pressure being set by Jalabert at the front. But those two riders, for them, it's all over, and now the race proper is starting to begin.
Well, Jalabert continues his magic season. The only dip he had was during the Tour de France, but other than that, he's had a great year yet again. The French don't think so. It's funny what the French seem to want a result in the Tour de France, but there's no doubt that he really is the world's most consistent bike rider. He's now coming up. His whole team were around him, they've got him, they did their job, but now they've put him onto the climb here of the Gallo. They've had to drop away and hope he can hang on there. Casagrande's the rider in the red off to the right. These two, Paul, will not give up though, will they?
They certainly haven't given up at all. Belli putting the pressure on just a little bit more, hoping in fact that that group of 5 or 6 riders I think will come up to him, because he feels confident enough that he can stay there. Obviously in very good form this afternoon. He's been out at the head of the race for over 100 kilometres, 60 miles, but still won't lay down the arms, still keeping the pressure on. He's on the bottom of the handlebars there, pulling an awful lot to keep the pressure on, but look how easily Jalabert comes across there.
Well, I'll tell you what, hats off to Belli there, because his idea was to keep the pressure on in the hope that all of the race wouldn't reach him, and that's exactly what has happened. All of the race hasn't reached him. Jalabert has just brought up a handful of riders. The most dangerous rider to him, I think, is the rider 3rd, 4th in line at the moment, and that is Michele Bartoli.
But another man in there too, Andrea Tafi, a man himself looking for overall victory in the World Cup this afternoon. Started 4th overall in the standings this morning. A win by him could give him the title, but now the race is looking very serious indeed. Jalabert showing he's a man full of power. He's caused the split there, but the main field not too far behind at the moment. Although a little bit separated, they need to have a much bigger gap than that once they go over the top.
And Filippo Simeoni is still hanging off the front here, keeping the pace nice and high. The one thing about racing in this part of Italy is the roads are in such good condition, and although these climbs are steep, they're a lot easier to climb than some of the bumpy old roads. In fact, the tempo, and Simeoni clearly not a marked man by either Bartoli or Jalabert or Tafi, because Simeoni again is beginning to open a gap.
Well, that's pretty remarkable considering how long he's been at the head of this race this afternoon, but obviously a little bit of marking going on now between Tafi, between Bartoli and between Jalabert. Now, if they want to race sensibly, they must put the pressure on now and try and cause some sort of a difference, because you can see in fact the yellow jersey there just at the back of this group is Laurent Jalabert. He's caused the split, but he hasn't insisted, which is why there are several riders now starting to come back from the rear of the race.
Well, the chase group is consisting of 8 riders there. It looked as though 3 or 4 others were just about to bridge the gap. So that's going to give them a nice little breakaway bunch here, and I think the rest of the race at this stage must be considered out of it. Casagrande, a great Tour de France for him, now trying to round off a very, very good season, a man they're talking about for big things in the future.
Certainly was a consistent man when it came to the big mountain stages of the Tour this year, and it's good to see that when you come to a race like the Tour of Lombardy at the end of a very long and hard season for these professional riders, that he can still be competitive and still at the head of affairs. But still, the man putting the pressure on in that group, in fact Vladimir Belli, the man who just a few moments ago was here with Simeone, he's the one setting the tempo. The big leaders at the moment, I think, waiting just a little bit, because this is after all a 10-kilometre climb, 6 miles before they get to the summit, and that's probably why the big challengers Bartoli, Tafi and Jalabert are waiting just a little bit, and they may well launch their attack as we get nearer to the summit of the climb.
Well, right now, the rider at the front, Belli, he's the other man that was in that breakaway. He's being left to do all the tempo riding as well. It's nice to see from the helicopter just the shape of the roads here in Italy. They twist and turn their way through the mountains. And the breakaways, well, the bunches are now split up right the way down this climb. And it's all due to the tempo riding of this rider here, Filippo Simeone of the Asics team. And he's not going to give up without a fight, and good luck to him.
Well, Simeone, to my knowledge, has never had a victory at all in his career. He turned professional in 1995 for the Carrera team alongside Claudio Chiappucci, and only in this latter part of this season has he started really to shine quite well. But you can see he's really keeping the pressure on there, Phil, and this group now, I think, has swelled to around about 14 or 15 riders. I just caught a sign there of Axel Merckx in the yellow jersey of Polti, so he's done a good ride. Axel was up there in the Tour of Lombardy last year, and hoping, I think, for him to get a good result today, because that would round off a season for him which has not been quite as good as he would have expected.
Well, it looks like from the air there about 2 distinct bunches and a couple of stragglers now. That is what is left of the Tour of Lombardy this year, the 91st edition of it. The Italians have won for the past 2 years, and in the strange guise of Filippo Simeone, are trying to win again this time around. Steady but surely, he's climbing up this mountain, keeping his gears as low as he dare, keeping the tempo high, and causing a little bit of confusion. Vladimir Belli, the rider who was with him, dropped back to the chase group. Francesco Casagrande is the rider in red. He's had 3 wins this year, but it's not so much the wins as the great place he's had in the Tour de France. 6 he finished there. And we mustn't forget either, Paul, he was 4th in Milan-San Remo right out at the start of the season.
It certainly was a great season for him, but in the white jersey there, just to the left-hand side, you can see David Rebellin, so he's actually recovered very well indeed to pull himself back into this front group.
A little bit of a struggle for Rebellin, but he's got on, and he's part of that, and if you can stay on and recover, then of course he will be a very dangerous man in a possible sprint finish. But first of all, they're going to have to work out just what they're going to do with this rider, Simeone. The thing is, Paul, he's not necessarily a marked rider because he's not that experienced, but when you've got a lot of riders who are marked in that chase group, then they start discussing and arguing as to who is going to take up the chase.
Certainly there's a lot at stake this afternoon, because 5 of the riders in that group there have a chance of winning the World Cup, the overall title, which is a season-long competition, an unofficial World Championship for one-day riders, if you'd like. And also Jalabert, he's got a little bit of revenge he wants to hand out, I think, because he's the man who was expected to win the World Championships just a week ago. So all of these riders are going to start to look at each other, and that could give Simeone the opportunity to open up a gap. But I think he's starting to weaken there, because I could just see the main field not very far behind.
Yes, when you look over your shoulder, it means things are not going too good. And Simeone, I think, is going to be joined. Ironically, the man who's done all of the chasing is his erstwhile breakaway companion, Vladimir Belli. And nobody willing to help. But watch out for Bartoli here, who's hovering on Belli's wheel. There he is. He knows that a good position at the finish today will give him the World Cup. He's the best place, really. Well, I suppose in theory he and Rebellin, they've got to finish apart, obviously. They're now the top 2 favourites for the World Cup, going by this breakaway, and it looks as though it's over to that break.
It certainly does. Another man that they must also be very careful of is Andrea Tafi, because he's also starting the day this morning in 4th place in the overall standing, so he too in with a chance. But he's got a good man in the breakaway with him, Paolo Lanfranchi, riding for the Mapei squad, so he'll be able to help Tafi once they get to the steeper part of this climb. But now the pressure coming on, and that looks to me as if it's all over for Simeone, but what a brave move.
And Lanfranchi is having a tremendous end to his season. No actual wins, but he's getting placed in all the big races here in Italy this last couple of weeks. And he's made the decisive split again. So, Vladimir Belli, a job done, but continues to set the pace here. Casagrande's on his wheel. Bartoli looks to me as though he's itching to get at this race now, because he's sensing a great victory here in the World Cup.
can feel the nerves, you can feel the tension starting to build up now. He knows that he's got a great chance of getting rid of one or two of these other riders. He's waiting, I think, for the moment when he wants to pounce. He's sitting there almost as if he's ready to start sprinting when the opportunity presents itself. But the man doing a great ride is Belly. He's never come off the front. He's set the pace all of the time. And in fact, one or two riders starting to disappear from this group. You can see there one or two falling off because of the pace being set at the front by the man, Vladimiro Belli, who's been at the head of the race for over 100 kilometres.
Well, these are the tempo climbs here, and many of you will know Italy. We're looking down on Alex Zula there in the yellow jersey, who is falling away from the action. But these climbs just seem to go on, and this is now attacked by Jalabert, who's trying to stitch this one up. Bartoli clearly waiting for this move, out of the saddle, and fairly sprinting across the gap here, and Casagrande is coming as well. A complete lifting of the pace here by Jalabert.
Well, he knew exactly what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. In fact, he caught the cameraman by surprise there. His acceleration pushed the cameraman to actually accelerate very quickly around that corner. The attack came from Laurent Jalabert, as we expected, on the col of the Gallo. And look at this, Phil. He's going away with Michele Bartoli, and Casagrande doesn't seem to be able to follow the rhythm.
He's caught him on one leg, I think, Paul, because Jalabert there is licking his lips as he goes around that corner. He split the field up with an acceleration. Now, if he sticks true to form, he'll ease just a little bit, take a few deep breaths, and he'll kick again, because that's how he gets rid of his rivals, Laurent Jalabert. He's enjoying the publicity, all the cameramen coming for the shot, which they think might have decided this race. Only Bartoli now is hanging on to his back wheel and hoping he becomes a little less frisky before the top of this climb.
This is a real powerhouse, this man, Laurent Jalabert. He's got the form from the end of season. He was sent to the World Championships to ride the individual time trial, and the French said, what are we doing sending Jalabert there? We can't believe it. He's not a time trialist. But when you've got the form, you can ride a very good time trial indeed, and he's certainly got the form at this end of season, and so has Michele Bartoli. These two riders have got just two chasers to worry about now. That's Francesco Casagrande in the red, and that looks very much to me like Paolo Lanfranchi, the Mapei rider. Now, he's not going to know exactly what to do, because he will want Taffy to be in this group, so I don't think he's going to work with Casagrande just for the moment.
Oh, look at this, Paul. Look at this. The gap has opened here. Jalabert has realised the constant pacemaker has now cracked Bartoli. Bartoli knows if he just hangs there and holds that position, he will win the World Cup. But right now, Laurent Jalabert, no chance of winning the World Cup. He's dreaming only of a great victory here. French don't win many single-day classic races, and this will be very special to Jalabert.
It certainly will. He's only won one World Cup before in his career, amazingly enough, and that was Milan-San Remo. He's won the Flèche Wallonne, he's tried to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but if he can win this one, that would be remarkable, and he's doing it in fine style now, Phil, riding away from everybody. Such a great tactician. He waited for the pace to be set by other riders in that group, then all of a sudden, when he felt that he had the power, when he could feel the weakness in the other riders, he put the hammer down, and that's what he's doing right now.
Well, this is the rider who failed in the Tour de France. He failed in the Tour of Spain, where in the end he worked faithfully for his teammate Alex Zula, who went on to win. Now it's all down to him. Zula's helped him get in this position before dropping away from this race on over the top of the Gallo now, and Casagrande is leading the chase. Bartoli, who's I think's been out of the saddle for most of the climb here, just determined to hold on to anything that comes near him, because he knows if he stays clear of Rebellin and Taffy, he is going to win the World Cup. But if they want to catch up with the leader, Paul, well, they've got just about 30 kilometres in which to do it.
And 12 seconds is not an awful lot. It'll be interesting to see just exactly what Jalabert does now as we get a chance to see the chasers there. It looked as if one of those was Axel Merckx, but over the rest of the field, it certainly is starting to open up.
Now, has he gone too soon, or is he confident he can hold them off all the way to the finish? There it is, confirmation, 30 kilometres from the finish, over the top of the Gallo. And as you can see, the vast majority of the contour now is steadily descending down to the finish in Bergamo. Now, tricky descent. He's a good descender, Laurent Jalabert. I don't think he'll take too many chances here. He's just checking over to see if there's any sign of who is coming at him. Well, at the moment, it's three Italians, and, he could have a little bit of trouble with them if they do bridge the gap.
Certainly, but still with 30 kilometres to go, I think he would rather have a little bit of help coming up from behind. And a man like Michele Bartoli, even though he was in difficulty on the climb there, will certainly recover once he gets over the top and ride very well. He's at the back of the group now. They're leading round the corner is Francesco Casagrande, Paolo Lanfranchi in second position, and Bartoli just backing off a little bit round the corner there, but it's amazing position he's got here. He's out of the saddle, using all of his courage to stay with these riders and hoping that they will pull back Laurent Jalabert at the front, and hoping, I suppose, that Taffy and Rebellin, who are behind him, won't come back up, because those are his nearest challengers for World Cup victory.
Well, Casagrande there, who showed us in the Tour de France, he can go down hills as well as go up them pretty quickly. And now he's taking control of the descent. Not an easy descent, too many twists and turns there to make a lot of time up on anybody. But now we're getting out onto the longer straights and the smoother bends, and it's a chance now for the three Italians to get themselves together. Laurent Jalabert, I think he's more or less continuing here, just waiting to see what works out. He's probably not carrying any idea of either to go alone or to wait for them right now.
He's just waiting for the race to develop at the moment. He's keeping a nice tempo. He's not taking too many risks around these corners, which most of them you can actually go around without even touching your brakes for the moment. As we go into one or two of these, you can see Jalabert lining himself up very nicely on the right-hand side of the road, cutting across the apex, coming in there at a very good speed. We get a chance there, just a glimpse, which shows us it's around about 50 miles an hour they're going down here.
And this is the bend where Jalabert's just gone round, so we're looking at a very few seconds gap. And Casagrande seems to be the preferred leader of the descent as he kicks out of that corner, going a bit further down the line here. Looks like Taffy down there, and possibly Rebellin on his wheel.
It could very well be that they did go over the top of the climb, just a little bit of drift there, so they too will have to take a few risks if they want to pull it all back there. That's Taffy leading them out, Rebellin in second position, and I think a little bit further up the road, if Race Radio is correct, is Axel Merckx somewhere.
Well, Merckx again in towards the end of a classic race, although I haven't actually caught a glimpse of him yet, but he's in there somewhere. Now back to the leader. This beautiful descent here. Italy really looking very, very pretty as the leaves begin to drop off the trees. Enjoying a mild start to the winter in Europe. And I must say, this man carrying on just like he has done all year. Laurent Jalabert at the head of affairs. What a great rider.
Quite remarkable. It's an awful long way back through the season to remember Paris-Nice, which he completely dominated in the month of March, and he's ridden exceptionally well ever since. But very interestingly enough, once he gets through the classics, he always takes a break of about 3 to 4 weeks and then has a hard time coming back to try and get himself in form for the Tour de France, but he does stay competitive over a very long period of time.
And his little town down in the south of France at Mazamet, they're about to name a street after him, so it's about time he gets back home there. And it seems to be the thing at the moment, doesn't it, Paul? They're naming streets after famous racing cyclists around the world.
It certainly is. Well, let's not forget in Carrick-on-Suir in Ireland, there's a nice little square called Sean Kelly Square, and in a few weeks' time there'll be a lot of riders going down there because it seems as if Sean Kelly is going to take part in the hamper race once again, a race that they have just over the Christmas months, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Kelly going out for a nice little victory.
Yes, well, Sean Kelly, he'll have to train harder because at the moment he's building his own house in Carrick-on-Suir. From what I can understand, it's a rather small mansion, some 15 bedrooms, and he's promising us all a training camp in Carrick. But if you go out training with Sean Kelly, believe me, you're in for a tough time. He's staying very, very fit indeed.
Well, I think I'll bring the car, Phil, and look after you.
Thanks very much. Well, back with the man who has set the trend today. He made no secret of the fact he wanted to win the Tour of Lombardy. The World Cup holding no interest, but there's the gap, and it's closing all of the time. As we're now bringing up the three Italians here, and what three Italians they are. The man on form is the Mappe boy at the back, Lanfranchi. He's had a clutch of second and third place finishes in the big races here in the autumn, and he's now looking for the one big victory that he's missing. Casagrande coming to the end of a great season for him, the Tuscan, and I must say that next year big things are expected of him. And of course Bartoli racing with only one thing in mind now, and it's not victory in the Tour of Lombardy.
No, it's not. It's victory in the World Cup, and that's what he wants. He wants to pull himself back to Jalabert because he realises then, with the form that Jalabert has got at the moment, this group of 4 riders will have a very good chance of staying clear. And Jalabert, using his brain, looking over his shoulder, seeing the group coming up to him, deciding to sit up, deciding to just eat a little bit of a drink to keep those energy levels topped up. And once again, once he's caught, they'll start to work together very well indeed. But I feel, Phil, that the man at the back, Paolo Lanfranchi, he won't do an awful lot for the success of this breakaway because he'll be thinking about Andrea Tafi, who is not too far behind.
And a little word there from Bartoli, and I think he was just saying to Jalabert, jump on, we want to go with this one. And of course Bartoli thinking, as I say, of victory in the World Cup, and he wants Jalabert to be here because he's a man that can really be the passport to success of this move. And immediately Bartoli goes out in front, and we can't have more than 25k to go.
There can't be more than 25 kilometres remaining, about 12, 13 miles, and these men now really got to put their backs into it. Jalabert deciding to sit in 4th position for a moment, just to take a little bit of respite to try and recuperate, but I'm sure, being the rider that he is, he will certainly come back up to the front. We get a chance here, I think, just to look at that little tap again as they come into the corner here. Jalabert finished having his drink. This is Bartoli coming through, shouting something at Jalabert, saying, look, you know, I'm not going to go for the win today, just work with us and we'll stay clear.
It could be, or it could have been an indication too as to there's nobody behind and we're going to have to go for it right now, because the Climate Gallo has decided these are the elite men as we come to the end of what has been an extraordinary year in world cycling. Nearly all of the classic races have set themselves average speed, as did the Tour of Spain this year. This one about to become the fastest ever Tour of Lombardy if they hold this towards the end. Here's the chase, Paul, and Taffy again trying to pull something out of the bag.
Certainly is. He's looking for a little bit of help there. They've pulled up Axel Merckx, who was in front of them, and they've also caught Paolo Valotti of the Cantina Tollo team, and Rebel in there in the white jersey. So we've got a big chase on here now. The men in 1st and 2nd position in this chasing group of 4 really would like to get up to Jalabert and Bartoli, because they're thinking also about World Cup victory today.
Well, the last time check we got, it was round about 50 seconds between the two groups, and each time we rejoin the leaders, I see only Michele Bartoli absolutely committing suicide here. All he wants is to keep this group away. Any position will do.
That's the only thing he's thinking about. He just wants the break to succeed, because even for him, 4th position doesn't mean anything at all. What is important to him is the points at the end of the day, because if he can finish 4th and last man of this group, he's going to walk away with the overall victory in the World Cup ahead of Rolf Sorensen. I would think Rolf is going to have a few extra beers now over the next 45 minutes or so, just to see exactly what the outcome of this race is going to be.
Well, he must know by now it's not going well for him, because in fact if Bartoli fails, it's not too far back down the line to David Rebellin. There he is in the white jersey, but again Paul, Rebellin is in a little bit of trouble here.
Certainly is. He's not got the best of form at this last race of the season. You know, he's suffered on the last climb there, the Col di Gallo. Now that this little rise is coming again, the pressure being put on at the front by Valotti, and you can see there is Rebellin. He can't follow the pace, but Taffy too, to me, starting to look as if he's suffering.
Yes, I agree. Taffy would not be in second wheel and suffering like this if he had the end of season form we normally see him with, the winner last year of the Tour of Lombardy. There's Casagrande, and he too is looking pretty cool at the front now. Where is everybody, he says? Well, Bartoli just drives on through. He somehow doesn't look like a full road racing cyclist, Bartoli. He's more like a sprinter the way he rides.
It's amazing the position he gets himself into, very low down tuck position, which keeps him very aerodynamic indeed, but it's not the smooth Longeline figure of a rouleur, as they call it, the man expected to ride long solo breakaways, but he certainly has got the power when it comes to getting out on his own. And today, all he's doing is accelerating. Every time the group slows down, he's trying to keep the pressure on at the front. He's trying to keep the speed up, because he doesn't want anybody to come back from behind.
The pink border, turning the riders left at the top of the hill. Here comes the chase behind. It's thinning out. Gone now the white jersey of David Rebellin, but he's not lost completely. And if he gets over this little hill, he might well zip onto the back wheel of this group again.
But he'll suffer. He'll pull everything he can inside out just to try and make sure he doesn't lose more than 10 or 15 metres over the top of these little drags, because he'll know that if he can stay almost in contact, he can take a few risks on the descent and just get back onto the leading group. But this is amazing here, because Bartoli's always at the front. Every time we see this front group of 4, Phil, it's Bartoli, pushing all the time, getting a little bit of help occasionally from Casagrande, then again from Jalabert, but all the time when it slows down, he's the man at the front punching away.
And riding superbly right now. I thought mid-term in the World Cup Series he was losing too much ground, and then he came back into the picture big time, and he's now just 12 miles away. The gap is only 20 seconds, so the hard riding, particularly by Lanfranchi, is having its effect here. They are coming back just 20 seconds to the leaders. Jalabert continually looking over his shoulder just to make sure nobody gets into his sights back there, because I think if they do, he'll go again.
Well, Rebellin has recovered there. He lost 10 or 15 metres. He pulled it back on the descent now, but this is more like panic than organised chasing. These riders are going to the front, doing short bursts, no organisation, putting the pressure on as much as they can. But again, Phil, Bartoli's at the front. Come on, Jalabert saying to Casagrande, I can't stay on his wheel. This is like a man possessed here. Well, I'm not sure what he's doing. All he wants to do is get clear and get to the finish. He's down there in the tuck position, pulling everything he can out of that body of his. Nothing to think about, not even saving any energy for the final sprint at the moment. The thing is making sure that the riders behind don't come back.
Well, it's interesting because that gap is only 20 seconds, Paul. The race referees have clearly taken the decision to use one service car to cover both groups. So if anybody has a problem in this group right now, then it's curtains for them, and let's hope that doesn't happen. It looks as though Jalabert has persuaded Casagrande to come and set the pace at the front. It is touch and go. This is a great pursuit, and now we've got it all in vision here. You can see a little bit of picture break-up on the left, but on the right you can see the clear images now of the men who are launching the chase, and Paolo Velotti is leading the charge on the right.
It's almost like a team pursuit on the track. 4 men against 4 men, and everyone fighting just for a little bit of survival. On the right-hand side, you can see that was Rebellin trying to stir it up there, trying to find something very special. But he, I think, must be worried a little bit because every time the race goes uphill, he starts to get dropped. He's having a very hard time.
He's having a hard time, but he's still heading for a high finish in the trophy if he can hold his position now, as they keep to try and stay in touch. Here's the leaders now once again, and Casagrande looks as though if he was in a bad patch, it's certainly gone now. He's spearheading this breakaway. Jalabert continues to check out. It's almost as if he's willing the boys to come up, and when he sees them, I'm sure he'll try and go again.
Well, this is quite remarkable. 18 seconds, so the group behind starting to eat into the lead of these 4 men at the front of the race. So it really is all going to go down to the very last few kilometres of the very last race in the World Cup. There was a neutral service car has just dropped back there, so they may well start to cover this leading group of 4 riders. And the group here of 4, which is being led now by Taffy, they too have neutral service in as well. So everybody's covered, and it's a fair race.
Well, there's Rebellin. His face, a picture actually. I remember Eddie Merckx saying to me this summer that he thought his 2 victories were lucky wins in the World Cup because he just happened to pull them out of the bag. There was a crash coming onto the track in the Grand Prix Suisse, and he won that one. And the race all regrouped, and he took out what was a 40-man bunch sprint in San Sebastian. But I think, with all respect to Eddie Merckx, I think if you win a World Cup race, however you win it, you deserve it.
And if you win 2, well, that's confirmation that it certainly wasn't a lucky win the first time round. Casagrande there, a little bit of information, I think, coming over through the airwaves to Laurent Jalabert, telling him what the gap is, encouraging him to work in this leading group of 4, and Bartley not needing anybody to tell him what to do. All he has to do, Phil, is ride and hope that those kilometres just tick away.
And ride is what he's doing here. He's willing to try all the way to the finish. And Casagrande ending a great season for him as well. Lanfranchi was just getting into the stride of this season, and it's just about to end. But, you know, it will be a terrific victory for him now because he can sprint.
He certainly can, and he won't at all contribute to the success of this breakaway because he will know that not very far back up the road, round about 18 seconds, is his own teammate Andrea Taffy. Now Taffy, if he can catch this group up and put a good performance in, he could be the man to win the World Cup. So this is really turning out to be a hell of a finale.
Indeed it is, and in fact they must know that Taffy is chasing. For that reason they're not really shouting at Lanfranchi for sitting at the back of that lead group. But even so, we are still treating this race very much as uncertain, and anybody could win this race from 8 men at the moment. But we're looking down here on Laurent Roux of TVM leading this group through. I think Ballerini is there at the back as well. So this will be, in effect, the 3rd bunch of 4 riders we've got now. Let's go back to the 2nd bunch of 4. Here's Taffy.
Wearing number 1 as last year's winner. He really is trying to pull this race together. He's such a courageous rider. He won't give up at all. He won a brilliant Tour of Lombardy last year. There's Axel Merckx there wearing 177. It's 4 men chasing 4 men, and its time is ticking away.
And this is a great break. There's Lanfranchi, the big danger in this breakaway to any hope for victory here by Laurent Jalabert, because he's sitting at the back and waiting for Taffy to come up, and with 15 kilometres to go, if he doesn't come up, he could use his sprint and be the big winner of the Tour of Lombardy. This has been a very, very good race this year because he's blown the field all over the hillsides.
It certainly has, and Lanfranchi, as you said, has had a very good week. He was 3rd in Milan-Torino, he was 2nd in the Tour of Piemonte. So what's it going to be today? There's 4 men at the front, he's sitting at the back of this group, and when it comes down to the final sprint, he is certainly going to be the freshest man there because Bartoli, I think, has used all of his ammunition this afternoon.
Absolutely, and all he's dreaming of now is the final white jersey as the winner of the World Cup, and break the reign of Johan Museeuw, who won the trophy for the past 2 years. Museeuw has had some really rotten luck this year in the World Cup competition, and it's left him right out of the points. The gap is opening up, but only just a little bit.
But Still, the pressure's being put on here by Andrea Taffy. This is remarkable, but I think they may well now have just started to break the back of the chasing four riders, because it is starting to go out, and that's the first sign, because up until now it has been very close indeed. There's the Once car going up of Manolo Sainz. He's going to go up there and talk to Laurent Jalabert in person and let him know just exactly how the race is performing. He will have looked at those riders as he went by just to see what their faces were like. He would look for the telltale signs of weakness or fatigue starting to come in there, and he'll go and give Laurent Jalabert, I think, the okay now to start working full time with this breakaway.
And to start thinking of how he's going to rid himself of primarily Casagrande and Lanfranchi. They are the two riders now he must regard as the most likely to beat him if it comes down to a rush for the line, because I don't think Bartoli will try to beat anybody. Once he sees that finishing line, he knows the trophy is his, and that's why he is just steering this breakaway on and on, almost single-handedly. He's pulled it out now to 30 seconds.
Quite remarkable. This is the group of Ballerini, I think, out on the road there, Phil, and they're being caught by the remains of the main field after what has been, I think, a very hard chase from the top of the Col di Gallo. So now just 4 riders in the front, 4 in second position, and now a main group of around about 30 riders.
Well, they've all come together. Now they're looking at who is going to do the action, while it looks as though Laurent Roux continues to push on his way there, but they're going to give up now. These are back with the leaders, and Jalabert also working now, so Manolo Sainz, I think, has been alongside him and told him what to do. But he's now riding with a little bit of caution as well, because as they run down to the final kilometres, Casagrande or Lanfranchi might try one.
The important thing, I think, for Jalabert is now it's a very flat run into the finish. There are no more little hills where the 1 or 2 of these other riders can launch a surprise attack. And this is the chasing group now of 4 riders. Sitting on the back is Ballotti. In third position there is Axel Merckx, the large, longilinear figure of the son of the cannibal. And the first 2 men in the group will be Taffy and David Rebellin, trying to do something to survive. But I think now they're starting to lose out.
I think they've gone through that psychological point in the race now where all their final hopes of bridging this gap, they know it's all over. It's only 6 miles from the finish. We've just gone past the 10-kilometre to go banner. And Jalabert now is watching everybody. Every time he goes through, he's watching where they all are. He's riding very close to one side of the road. As we look at the overall situation in the World Cup, and you can see now with 100 points for the win, what will happen to Michele Bartoli if he takes the win, because he'll clearly be well clear. There's how we score the race this year. It's a new format this year. It used to be 50 points for a win. It's changed now, and I think it's led to a far better series all around.
It certainly has, and with 4th place giving 40 points, Michele Bartoli would run out the overall winner of the World Cup by just 5 points ahead of Rolf Sorensen if they stay clear.
And Sorensen will say, how unlucky can you get, I would think, Paul, because 5th wouldn't be good enough, and there's only 4 in the breakaway. Well, this is still the chase group being driven on by a very inspired Paolo Vellotti today, and I must say if he finished 5th, which would be best of the chase group, that for him would be a formidable result as well.
Certainly would, but Michele Bartoli, he knows, and I think he's worked out all of the calculations and permutations in his head, and he just wants to make sure that they can stay clear right up to the finish line. Inside the 10-kilometre banner, it's not going to take them very long to make it, but a lot of picture breakup now as we start to get into the streets of Bergamo.
Just gone past the 9 kilometres to go board, so they're counting down very rapidly now, and with each kilometre it's going to mean the World Cup for Michele Bartoli. But who will win the Tour of Lombardy? 3 Italians and a Frenchman seem now to have this race to themselves.
They certainly do. This is, in fact, Alain Galopin coming up alongside here. He's the 2nd team director for the Française de Jeu. Obviously, Marc Madio at the finish line getting ready to accept the prize for the best team in the competition, because that, in fact, they won two events ago at the end of Paris Tours.
Well, they've had a great season with the surprise win of Frédéric Guédon as well in Paris-Roubaix, and they've been very, very confident throughout this series, and now, rightfully so, this new French team are the Team World Cup winners this year. And this man trying to solve the individual destiny of the trophy as well, as Bartoli continues to ride in this rather strange style he has of getting on with the job. He always looks to be completely under pressure, whereas you have this almost nonchalant and casual riding style of Laurent Jalabert. And here's the other solo specialist as well, Andrea Taffy, winner last year of this event, and now racing at the moment for 5th place today.
Certainly is. A lot of pressure on his face there. Rebellin seems to have recovered a little bit too. He was suffering just about 40 minutes ago when we were going over the climbs there, getting dropped incessantly, but kept pulling himself back into the race. But I don't think they've got it in their legs this afternoon to pull back this leading group of 4, because this is a serious turn being done at the front. by Francesco Casagrande, and I think Michele Bartoli's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. Jalabert, on the other hand, I feel starting to worry a little bit about the presence of Paolo Lanfranchi on the back, because over the last 30 kilometres, I don't think he's put his face in the wind once.
Just look at Bartoli here. He can't wait to get back on the front and just drive this breakaway on, and quite clearly he's thrown all hopes of victory today to the wind in favour of the World Cup. I'm not sure the Italians will appreciate that, you know, Paul, because they love Italians to win their races, and Bartoli quite clearly is thinking World Cup and not Tour of Lombardy today.
Well, they might not do happy with his performance there, because that is for them the most important thing, to win the Tour of Lombardy, to win Milan-San Remo, because they are the icons of the sport. But I think for Michele Bartoli, this has been one of his objectives for the season, to win the World Cup, so they may well forgive him if he can just do that at the end of the day.
And the last World Cup holder that came from Italy, by the way, was back in 1994, Gianluca Bortolami, who picked up 2 mid-term World Cup wins and out and popped as winner of the competition. And he's not really found that sort of form again, but he has had some rotten luck too, because he broke his arm in, I think it was the Tour of Italy last year.
He certainly seems to have recovered this year, because just a couple of days ago he won the Tour of Piemonte, and the impetus is certainly going out of the group now, Phil, because it's out to 46 seconds.
In 177, Axel Merckx, they're still working well enough, but they're just not quite on the edge of it now, because they're going around that same left-hand bend. We've just seen the 4 leaders go around, and the gap very much there, and it's gone out, if anything now. It's more than 30 seconds. As you can see, the sun is very high in the sky. It's mid-afternoon now. And this is a replay of what our cameras have just caught amongst the breakaway, and Bartoli here, as Casagrande tries to accelerate, has, I think, helped Laurent Jalabert to keep up there.
I think a little bit of a handsling, a repayment for all the work that's been done for the success of this breakaway by Laurent Jalabert, but a very good move and a real gentleman thing to do as well, because, in fact, the man Bartoli is the one who let the gap go, and I don't think he wanted to disadvantage Jalabert.
Well, I guess that's fair enough, because Bartoli wants the World Cup. He's got it now, barring an accident. They're not going to come across to this break. It's only a question of which order they go over the finishing line, and indeed even a 4th place of 4 for Michele Bartoli will still give him the World Cup by a mean 5 points.
6 kilometres left to go, just 4 miles, and everybody, I think, now just trying to will Michele Bartoli to the finish, because he's the man that has driven this group of 4 clear of the rest. He really has ridden like a man possessed this afternoon. A little bit dangerous coming into town now. They go into the streets of Bergamo and circle around, and then they will come up to the finish line. But the other 3 riders in this breakaway now are going to start to think about just exactly how they're going to finish off what they started on the Col du Gallo. And
I think we're only talking of 3, Paul, because I think Bartoli has hit the wall. I think his legs have suddenly turned to rubber, and he's just hanging on now. These are going to be a very long last few kilometres of the Tour of Lombardy for him. Note now that Jalabert has gone to the back. He's positioned himself behind Paolo Lanfranchi, because I think he's the man he'll fear most in the finish.
He certainly will, but Taffy hasn't put down arms. He's still trying to ride at the front. He's still trying to get a little bit of effort into those legs of his, looking for help from the other riders. This is one of the Velotti brothers from the Cantina Tollo team. He's just on his turn at the front, but I think for Taffy, time is running out.
He's not going to get across to his teammate. He's going to rely heavily now on Lanfranchi winning for Italy the Tour of Lombardy. Jalabert will have something to say about that, I am sure, because he's looked and ridden with so much confidence today. Bartoli is still riding, but I think now his legs are no longer attached to his body. I think he really is struggling.
I think he's on cruise control. He's put it there at automatic pilot, and he just wants to get himself to the finish. But this is the group of 4 behind there, with Rebellin, Taffy, still with Axel Merckx and Velotti. But just a moment ago, it looked as if there was a little bit of infighting going on between Lanfranchi and Jalabert, because it looked as if, in fact, Lanfranchi was taking Jalabert off the group of 4 at the front. So obviously those 2 riders are going to watch each other very carefully.
Well, let's go back and have a look ourselves here, because this is the 4 leader. These are the 4 leaders. And it looks as though Jalabert now has decided to stop assisting this breakaway. He's gambling on the gap, which is hovering at around about 45 seconds. He's not going to alter too much, and he's just going to ease back a little bit now and make sure that Lanfranchi stays 1 wheel in front of him. He's a wise man.
Well, the tactics coming thick and fast. Just a few moments ago there, we saw Giancarlo Ferretti, the man who is the team manager of MG Technogym, the man who is piloting Michele Bartoli to certainly a World Cup victory this afternoon. Coming alongside there too is the Seiko Cannondale team to give their little bit of information to Francesco Casagrande, informing them just exactly what the time gap is behind. But there's going to be a real fight, I think, between Lanfranchi and Laurent Jalabert.
Well, hoping our cameras don't wander away too much from those leaders now, because the attack could come at any moment. These are still the four chasers, the long, tall Axel Merckx in front of Andrea Tafi here, and then Davide Rebellin, former leader last year of the Tour of Italy, pops up with the odd big victory. He's had 2 World Cup races this year. Tafi has also been in the frame too, because he won the Rochester Grand Prix. We're now just 4 kilometres from the finish, and Eddie Merckx, his son Axel Merckx, is always in at the kill these days in the big races, but he's still looking for the victory.
And I think looking to a very important event for him in a couple of weeks' time, when he's going to get married in the Principality of Monaco.
And Eddie, in fact, met his fiancée on the Tour du Pont when he was racing there, because she is in fact Canadian. Well, good luck to the couple, and let's hope he can deliver a fine finish now in the Tour of Lombardy. It won't be the win though. In fact, it's not going to be in the first 4 places now, because that breakaway is still pulling away, and it's all thanks to the hard work of Michele Bartoli, who now knows he's got the World Cup in the bag.
He certainly does. Look at this man. He's just trying to wait for that finish line to come up, and Jalabert taking up 4th position now. It's amazing when these riders have these dark glasses on, because you can't imagine what is going through their minds. You don't know exactly what sort of tactics they're expecting to adopt, but I think Jalabert is waiting for Lanfranchi to be the man to launch the sprint, because he will be the freshest. He's done hardly a thing for the last 30 kilometres, and you can see him just tightening up his shoes a little bit there, making sure that everything is ready for the final sprint to the line for this Tour of Lombardy.
A little less than 2 miles to go to the finish. This has been a 250 kilometres race today. That's about 155 miles. It's been a tough race over the hills, and now we're back into Bergamo. The race was here a few hours ago, by the way, as it passed through, but now it's come back with 4 distinct leaders and 4 distinct chasers, and they are getting no closer together now. Italy will win one thing, but will they win at the Tour of Lombardy? They've got a 3-to-1 chance.
Well, it's going to be very difficult indeed, because, you know, Laurent Jalabert, I think, starting to look very confident at the back there. He knows the man he wants to pick out, and it's Paolo Lanfranchi. The 2 riders at the front, this man Michele Bartoli and Francesco Casagrande, they've been working all of the time over the last few kilometres, but the 2 at the back, I think, starting to think a lot more about the sprint.
Oh, there's Casagrande, riding an American bicycle as well. And as far as we know, Chris Horner was the last American in this race to give up. He gave up when the race passed through Bergamo earlier on, but he's had a very solid season, and he knows a little bit of success as well this year, because of course he rides for the team which is now running out as the World Cup team champions for the year, Les Français des Jeux. And so Horner next year, I think you'll see a different rider in him, Paul, because he has 1 year of great experience this time.
He certainly has. I think he's going to make a few changes this year. He's going to move to a slightly warmer climate in France, onto the south coast there, and I think being a little bit closer to 1 or 2 of the other American riders, he'll be able to train so much better. And I think this year for him was really just an experience, an apprenticeship, and we'll see him improve leaps and bounds.
Or maybe he'll be in the winning break next year in the Giro di Lombardia. But right now it's these 4 riders, Bartoli, Casagrande, Lanfranchi, and sitting at the back where he's been for the last few kilometres is Laurent Jalabert. And I'm surprised, but nobody, principally Bartoli, has looked to Jalabert to do any work in this breakaway. They've just left him there.
Well, that's quite normal, really, because Lanfranchi there in 3rd position is the man who's really been defending from Andrea Tafi. So those are the rules of the game. If you have a teammate and you have a job to defend and the order has come from your team manager, well, then that is the rules that we play by. And that's why I think Lanfranchi has done nothing at all. And I think the fact that Jalabert has been sitting on for the last couple of kilometres too, nobody can decry that either, because he worked very hard. He was the instigator of this breakaway on the Col du Gallo just a few moments ago, and he's the man, as we come now into the final kilometre, will be looking to follow the wheel of Lanfranchi to the line. But Bartoli, he hasn't even swung off.
And Lanfranchi is sitting there, the crouched position of a sprinter, the man that's got the form, a 2nd and 3rd in semi-classic races in almost as many days. And can he project himself now right into the hot spot number 1? He follows Casagrande's wheel around the corner, but just sitting there, flexing his legs, is Laurent Jalabert. Bartoli is going to take this race until they pass him. He's not looking for any assistance. Now a very sharp right-hand bend here, and the finish will be in sight very shortly.
Well, still is Bartoli leading them out. He's going to keep the speed as high as possible. This is the group behind. That looks like Velotti, who's gone away from the Tafi group. Axel Merckx trying to chase, but the race is here at the front. And still, Michele Bartoli, the man who's looking to win the World Cup this afternoon, takes them into the final straights.
Man, the World Time Trial champion must go into these last couple of 100 metres as the favourite. They're letting Bartoli lead till the last possible moment. The winner of the World Cup there is the deviation for the following vehicles. Let's hope the riders don't do it. It's been done before. Bartoli can see the line now, opens up the sprint, and still a lot of work to do for Laurent Jalabert. Now comes Lanfranchi. Italy may have got this one with Paolo Lanfranchi, but a big kick from the man in yellow. Jalabert comes clear. He'd waited for the last possible moment, and he's done it with ease. He wins the Tour of Lombardy. He can add that now to his other classic victories, which include the Milan-San Remo. And Bartoli, Paul, got the 4th place, the very minimum place required to win the World Cup. Now back to the race for 5th, and it looks to me as though Velotti is clear and will take a fine 5th place. He's just gone around that top corner, in fact.
Well, he sorted that out, but that's obviously a lot to do with these riders have been looking at each other, I think, for the last couple of kilometres. It was a great chase by Andrea Taffi and, in fact, also by David Rebellin, but they've obviously had to give up a little bit now as the crowds are going wild. They realise that Michele Bartoli being taken away there has won the World Cup by 5 points. Velotti coming into the finishing area now, well, he'll be a very happy man, I should think, with his 5th place. And then Axel Merckx is going to try and get away from the rest there because he's alongside Andrea Taffi and David Rebellin.
Well, 5th in the Tour of Lombardy for Paolo Velotti is an excellent result, and he's done it in style too, getting away in the last kilometre for the finish. He'll be extremely pleased with this, and it's a good result too for his small team, the Cantina. He comes up, and it's 5th place in the Tour of Lombardy for Paolo Velotti. And in the distance, it looks to me as though it might be Merckx who's off to the right of our picture, the long, tall, thin man. Axel Merckx, because we know that David Rebellin is just happy to be at the finish. He has suffered over this last 30 kilometres, but Eddie Merckx, his son Axel, is clear, and I think he's just about going to hang on. Look at Taffi here trying to dice it out with Rebellin. Rebellin, I don't think, has got the legs. Taffi is only trying to beat Rebellin because he's not going to catch Merckx. Merckx will take 6th place, Taffi will be 7th, and David Rebellin will finish in 8th. Laurent Jalabert, though, well, that's his 19th win of the season, and it's not over for him yet because he still plans on riding a few more races, principally in Spain for his sponsors. So who knows, he could get a tally which will rival that of Eric Zabel, the big winner so far this year. But what a classic Tour of Lombardy this has been, Paul, and what a great result. Michele Bartoli, the World Cup winner.
Certainly been a great day for Laurent Jalabert after his defeat last week in the World Championships, and coming up to the line here, just holding them off, in fact, is Vladimiro Belli. Now, he's done an incredible ride this afternoon, and he's just jumped away from the leading group here, and on the right-hand side, you can see Gianluca Bortolami trying to lead out his own teammate, Laurent Brochard, in the white jersey coming through there, and a good ride by Brochard, who's really been at the head of affairs for most of the day, but just getting across on the line in 10th position there is Alessandro Bertoloni.
A good ride by Belli there because he was part of the breakaway which started all the action today, but here's the man who finished it off. A victory for Laurent Jalabert of France, and that was a superbly well-taken victory for the World Time Trial champion. And this is how he did it. He was right to fear Paolo Lanfranchi, the man on form, a good sprinter. Lanfranchi went a long way out. It took Jalabert a little time to get into his slipstream, but once he was into that slipstream, the acceleration was fast and furious. He'd won the race already here. He knew it, and he had plenty of time for what will be a memorable victory salute for him. And so Laurent Jalabert steps up onto the winner's podium, and a great victory for him indeed at the end of a tremendously long and consistent season. The last Frenchman to win this, by the way, was Gilles de Lyon back in 1990, so it's not so long ago, but I think this rider has a little bit better of a pedigree. Salutes the crowd, his 19th win of the season. Alongside him, Paolo Lanfranchi and Francesco Casagrande, all given the same time in the result, by the way, while Michele Bartoli tailed off by 3 seconds for that vital 4th place, which has given him the World Cup for this season. And Jalabert taking just 5 hours, 48 minutes and 44 seconds today to cover the 250 kilometres, the same time as Lanfranchi and Casagrande, 3 seconds off the pace at Michele Bartoli. In 5th place, a lone 5th place too for Paolo Velotti, but 1 minute and 7 seconds back. Then came Axel Merckx, Andrea Taffi and David Rebellin, and they were just over 1.5 minutes down. This was a great classic today, and the time gaps were there to prove it. Well, only 56 of the 173 starters finished today, but the proudest of them all, apart from Jalabert, that is, surely is this man, Michele Bartoli, who is now waiting to receive the final white jersey of the 1997 season, and this without doubt the one they all want, because he is the winner of the World Cup for 1997, and there he is. He really raced for this jersey today, threw away any chance of winning the Tour of Lombardy. He had to finish at worst in 4th place. He did just that. It gives him victory with 280 points by just 5 points over Rolf Sørensen of Denmark. Andrea Tafi has reversed it with David Rebellin because he has gone 3rd in the final classification, pushing Rebellin down to 4th. And Laurent Jalabert, with his win today, has finished in 5th place with 214 points. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this coverage of the 91st Giro di Lombardia, and until the new season and the next time we meet, I'm Phil Liggett for Paul Sherwin saying goodbye.